My father spent 20 years telling me I'd be nothing. So when I became his superior at the company he worshipped, I had one choice to make: professional courtesy or the revenge he deserved. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I remember the exact moment my father decided I wasn't worth his time. I was 12 years old, sitting at our kitchen table in our modest Phoenix home, struggling with a math problem. The numbers blurred together on the page, and I could feel tears pricking at my eyes. My older brother, Kevin, had already finished his homework and was playing video games in the living room. The sounds of his success echoed through our small house. "Dad, can you help me with this?" I asked, my voice small. Robert Martinez didn't even look up from his newspaper. He was still wearing his work clothes, a crisp button-down shirt with the Clearwater Industries logo embroidered on the pocket. He'd been working there for 15 years at that point, in their logistics department. It wasn't glamorous, but he wore that logo like a badge of honor. "Ask your mother," he muttered. I'm tired, but it wasn't just that day. It was every day after that. While Kevin got help with his science projects, I got silent. While my brother received praise for decent grades, I got indifference for excellent ones. By the time I turned 14, I'd stopped asking for anything at all. My mother, Elena, tried to compensate. She'd stay up late helping me study, attending every school event my father skipped. She never said it outright, but I could see the sadness in her eyes whenever Dad ignored my achievements. When I made an honor roll, she'd post it on the fridge. He'd walk right past it without a glance. High school became my battleground. I threw myself into everything: academics, debate team, student government. If I couldn't get my father's attention through achievement, maybe I could earn it through sheer excellence. I graduated third in my class of 347 students. Kevin had graduated middle of the pack, but Dad had thrown him a party anyway. For me, there was dinner at a chain restaurant and a card with a generic "Congratulations, graduate" message. The night before I left for college, Arizona State University, on a partial academic scholarship, I made one last attempt. I found my father in the garage organizing his tools. The space smelled like motor oil and disappointment. "Dad, I wanted to talk about my major. I'm thinking about business administration. Maybe even pursue an MBA eventually." He didn't stop arranging his wrenches. "Business? Alice, be realistic. You're not cut out for that world. It takes a certain type of person, someone with confidence, leadership skills. You've always been too quiet, too soft." The words hit me like physical blows, but I stood my ground. I've been class treasurer for 2 years. I organized 3 successful fundraisers. That's high school," he interrupted, finally turning to face me. His eyes were cold, assessing. "The real world is different. You're going to struggle, probably drop out, end up in some dead-end job. I've seen it 100 times. You're just not built for success, mija. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be." I felt something crack inside me that night. Not break, crack. Like a fault line forming in bedrock, creating space for something new to emerge. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply nodded, walked back to my room, and made myself a promise. I would prove him wrong, no matter what it took. College became my obsession. While other freshmen were discovering parties and freedom, I was discovering case studies and business theory. I worked 2 part-time jobs to reduce my student loans, one at the campus library, another at a local coffee shop. Every dollar I earned felt like a small victory against the future my father had predicted. My sophomore year, I landed an internship at a mid-sized marketing firm in Tempe. It was unpaid, which meant adding a 3rd job to my schedule, but the experience was invaluable. I watched how deals were made, how relationships were cultivated, how power moved through corporate hallways like an invisible current. The firm's CEO, Margaret Chen, took an interest in me. She was everything I aspired to be: sharp, strategic, and utterly self-assured. During one late evening when I was organizing files, she stopped by my desk. "You're here past 9 on a Friday," she observed. "That's dedication or desperation. Which is it?" "Both," I answered honestly. I can't afford to fail. She studied me for a long moment. Come to my office Monday morning. I want to talk about your career trajectory. That conversation changed everything. Margaret became an unofficial mentor, teaching me things no textbook could. How to read a room, how to negotiate without aggression, how to turn obstacles into opportunities. She saw something in me that my own father never had: potential. By my junior year, I'd transformed that unpaid internship into a paid position as a junior marketing coordinator. My responsibilities grew with each passing month. I assisted with client presentations, contributed to strategy sessions, and slowly built a network of contacts across the Phoenix business community. Kevin, meanwhile, had dropped out of community college after one semester and was working at a car dealership. During family dinners, Dad would spin this as Kevin learning the school of hard knocks and getting real-world experience. My actual accomplishments went unmentioned, as if speaking them aloud would make them too real, would force him to reconsider his assessment of me. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration and a job offer from Margaret's firm. The starting salary was modest but respectable, $52,000 a year. More than my father made after 2 decades at Clearwater Industries. At my graduation, my mother cried with pride. Dad checked his phone through the entire ceremony. The next 5 years were a blur of 60-hour work weeks, professional development courses, and strategic networking. I changed firms twice, each time negotiating a significant raise. I earned my MBA through night classes while working full-time. I built a reputation as someone who could turn around struggling accounts and identify untapped market opportunities. By 27, I was a senior account director at Pemberton Strategic Group, one of the Southwest's most prestigious consulting firms. I managed a team of 8, oversaw multi-million-dollar accounts, and had executive clients seeking my advice on their marketing strategies. My father never asked about my work. On the rare occasions when family gatherings forced us into the same room, he'd talk to Kevin about car sales figures while I sat silently, a ghost at my own family's table. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. I received a call from Daniel Brennan, the chief marketing officer at Clearwater Industries, the company my father had dedicated his entire career to, the company whose logo he wore like armor. Ms. Martinez, Brennan's voice was warm, professional. Your work at Pemberton has come to our attention. We're undergoing a significant restructuring, and we're looking for someone to lead our new strategic growth division as vice president. Your name keeps coming up in our searches. Would you be interested in having a conversation? I should have felt excited. Instead, I felt that old crack inside me widen into a canyon. Clearwater Industries. My father's company. A vice president position. At 28 years old. I'm very interested, I heard myself say. When would you like to meet? A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The Clearwater Industries headquarters was a sleek glass tower in downtown Phoenix, 12 stories of tinted windows reflecting the desert sun. I'd driven past it countless times throughout my childhood, watching my father disappear through those revolving doors every morning. He'd always spoken about the building with reverence, as if it were a temple rather than an office complex. Now I was walking through those same doors, heels clicking against polished marble, with a leather portfolio containing my career achievements. The security guard checked my ID and directed me to the executive floor. 11th level. My father worked in logistics on the 3rd. Daniel Brennan met me in the lobby of the executive suite. He was in his early 50s, silver-haired, with the kind of effortless confidence that came from decades of closing major deals. His handshake was firm, his smile genuine. Alice, thank you for coming. I've heard impressive things about your work with the Sanderson account. Turning around a failing product launch in under 6 months? That's the kind of strategic thinking we need here. He led me through a maze of glass-walled offices where executives spoke in hushed tones over conference calls. The entire floor felt different from the rest of the building. Quieter, more refined, more expensive. This was where decisions that affected thousands of employees were made daily. We entered a large corner office where two other people waited. Jessica Thornton, the chief operations officer, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who radiated analytical intensity. Beside her sat Thomas Whitmore, CEO of Clearwater Industries, the man who ultimately controlled my father's paycheck, his benefits, his entire professional existence. "Ms. Martinez, please, have a seat." Whitmore gestured to a chair facing all three of them. "We've been reviewing your portfolio with great interest." For the next 90 minutes, they grilled me. Not with hostility, but with the thorough scrutiny of people who made high-stakes hiring decisions. They asked about my approach to market analysis, my leadership philosophy, and how I handled difficult team dynamics. Jessica Thornton focused on data. She wanted numbers, metrics, proof of ROI. Daniel Brennan cared about creativity and innovation. Thomas Whitmore watched my body language, testing whether I could maintain composure under pressure. I'd prepared for this. Every question they asked, I answered with specific examples from my career. When Jessica challenged my numbers on the Pemberton restructuring project, I pulled out documentation. When Daniel questioned my approach to brand repositioning, I outlined my methodology step by step. When Thomas asked how I'd handle resistance from long-term employees resistant to change, I didn't flinch. Change management requires respect for institutional knowledge while introducing new perspectives, I explained. I've found that the most resistant employees often become the strongest advocates once they feel heard and understand the strategic reasoning behind decisions. Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You're 28 years old. This role would put you in charge of a division that affects our entire company's growth trajectory. You'd be managing people twice your age, some who've been here since before you were born. Why should we take that risk?" This was the moment. I could play it safe, or I could be honest. "Because I've spent my entire life being underestimated," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "I've been told I wasn't smart enough, wasn't tough enough, wasn't built for success. Every single time, I proved those assessments wrong. You're not taking a risk on potential, Mr. Whitmore. You're hiring proven results. The only question is whether you're willing to look past a birth date to see what someone can actually deliver." Silence filled the room. Jessica's eyebrows raised slightly. Daniel smiled. Thomas's expression remained unreadable. "Tell us about a time you failed," Jessica said suddenly. "A real failure, not a disguised success story." I took a breath. Most candidates would panic at this question, scrambling to present failure as growth. But I'd learned from Margaret Chen that honesty built more credibility than perfection. 2 years ago, I lost a client worth $800,000 annually. Marshall Technologies. I'd gotten overconfident, stopped doing the deep check-ins, and assumed the relationship was solid. When a competitor offered them a more innovative approach, I didn't see it coming. I lost the account and it was entirely my fault. "What did you do?" Thomas asked. I didn't make excuses. I owned it completely with my firm's leadership, analyzed where my process had broken down, and rebuilt my client management system from scratch. I implemented quarterly strategy reviews instead of annual ones, created early warning indicators for client dissatisfaction, and trained my team on proactive relationship management. Over the next year, I brought in 3 new clients worth a combined $2.3 million. But more importantly, I never made that mistake again. Jessica nodded, making notes. Daniel exchanged a glance with Thomas. "One more question," Thomas said. "You currently make," he glanced at his papers, "approximately $140,000 annually at Pemberton. This VP position starts at $185,000 with performance bonuses that could push your total compensation to $240,000. What's driving this move? Because if it's just money, I need to know that now." I'd anticipated this too. In corporate America, motivation mattered almost as much as capability. Money is part of it. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But what really interests me is the scope. At Pemberton, I execute strategy for other companies. Here, I'd be building strategy from the inside, with direct impact on organizational direction. I want to move from consultant to leader, from advisor to decision maker. Clearwater Industries is positioned for significant growth, and I want to be part of making that happen. What I didn't say, I want to walk these halls as an executive while my father pushes papers 3 floors below. I want him to see what I've become despite every poisonous word he ever spoke. I want him to understand exactly how wrong he was. Thomas stood, extending his hand. We have 2 other candidates to interview this week. We'll be in touch by Friday with our decision. The handshakes were professional, courteous, revealing nothing. I left that office with no sense of whether I'd impressed them or missed the mark entirely. The elevator ride down felt surreal. When the doors opened on the 3rd floor, my father's floor, I instinctively stepped back, letting them close before anyone could board. I wasn't ready for that encounter. Not yet. That evening, I met my mother for dinner at her favorite Mexican restaurant. She'd aged gracefully, though worry lines creased her forehead, permanent marks from years of mediating family tensions that never quite exploded but never fully resolved. "How did it go, mija?" she asked over enchiladas. I think it went well, but it's hard to say. They're interviewing other people. My mother studied me carefully. "Does your father know you applied?" "No, and I'd like to keep it that way until I know whether I got the position." She nodded slowly, understanding the implications. "And if you do get it? Then he'll find out along with everyone else at the company." Elena reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'm proud of you, Alice, whatever happens. I hope you know that." "I do, Mama. I wish Dad—" I stopped myself. There was no point finishing that sentence. 3 days later, my phone rang. Daniel Brennan's name appeared on the screen. "Alice, I'm calling with good news. We'd like to offer you the position of Vice President of Strategic Growth at Clearwater Industries. Thomas was particularly impressed with your interview. Can you start in 3 weeks?" My hand tightened around the phone. "Yes, absolutely yes. Excellent. HR will send over the formal offer letter and benefits package. There'll be a company-wide announcement next Monday introducing you to staff. Welcome to Clearwater, Alice." After I hung up, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, processing what had just happened. I'd done it. Against every prediction, every dismissive comment, every moment of doubt my father had planted in my mind. I'd done it. I was about to become Robert Martinez's superior. The question now was, what kind of person would I be with that power? The weekend before my official start date, I couldn't sleep. Saturday night, I lay in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. How would the announcement happen? Would my father be in the room? What would his face look like when he realized his failure of a daughter was now part of executive leadership? Sunday afternoon, my mother called. "Your father mentioned there's some big company meeting tomorrow. All hands assembly. They're announcing organizational changes." Her voice carried a careful neutrality, but I could hear the underlying tension. "Alice, is this—" "Yes, Mama. That's when they're introducing me." A long pause. "How do you feel about that?" How did I feel? Vindicated, terrified, powerful, petty, justified. All of it swirling together in a cocktail of emotions I couldn't quite separate. "I feel like I've earned this," I finally said. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I've earned it." "You have, mija. You absolutely have." Monday morning arrived with crystalline clarity. I chose my outfit with surgical precision. A charcoal gray suit with a burgundy blouse, professional but commanding. Pearl earrings my mother had given me for college graduation. Minimal makeup. I wanted to look exactly like what I was. A serious executive who belonged in that room. I arrived at Clearwater Industries at 7:30 a.m., 90 minutes before the assembly. Daniel Brennan met me in the executive parking garage. Apparently, I now had an assigned spot on level P1, marked with my name. Robert Martinez parked in the general employee lot. "Nervous?" Daniel asked as we rode the elevator to 11. "Energized," I corrected. He smiled. "Good. Thomas wants to meet with you briefly before the announcement. Run through some logistics." Thomas Whitmore's office was twice the size of any space I'd ever worked in. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Phoenix, the desert mountains visible in the distance. His desk was organized chaos, stacks of reports, a laptop, 3 monitors, family photos strategically placed. "Alice, come in. Coffee?" He gestured to a sophisticated espresso machine in the corner. Please. Black. As he prepared the cups, he spoke without turning around. I'm going to be direct with you because I think you can handle it. Your last name raised some flags during our background check. My stomach dropped. Sir? Robert Martinez. Logistics coordinator, 3rd floor. Been with us for 22 years. According to HR records, he listed you as his daughter on his emergency contact forms years ago, though that's since been updated to just your brother and mother. Thomas handed me the coffee, his expression unreadable. Want to tell me about that? This was it. I could downplay, deflect, or tell the truth. Robert Martinez is my father. We have a complicated relationship. He doesn't know I applied here, and he doesn't know I got the position. He will find out along with everyone else in approximately, I checked my watch, 70 minutes. Thomas sat on the edge of his desk, studying me. Define complicated. He spent my entire life telling me I'd never succeed. I've spent my entire career proving him wrong. This position is the culmination of that effort. Are you here because you want the job or because you want to prove a point? The question hit like a slap, but it deserved an honest answer. Both, I admitted. I want this job because I'm qualified for it and because I can excel at it. But would I have applied if it weren't his company? Probably not. Does that make me petty or driven? I'm honestly not sure anymore. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. You know what I appreciate? You didn't lie to me just now. Most people would have fed me some sanitized version. Here's what matters to me. Can you do this job without letting family drama interfere with business decisions? Yes, even if that means working on projects that impact your father's department. Especially then, I'll be harder on myself to remain impartial because I know everyone will be watching for favoritism or vindictiveness. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Just know that I'll be watching too. Your personal life is your business, but the moment it affects company performance, it becomes mine. Understood? Completely. Good. Let's go make you famous. The assembly was held in the company's largest conference center on the 1st floor. Rows of chairs faced a small stage with a podium and projection screen. Employees filtered in, logistics coordinators mixing with marketing specialists, IT staff chatting with accounting. The room hummed with speculation. Everyone knew changes were coming, but nobody knew specifics. I waited in a side room with Daniel and Jessica Thornton, watching through a narrow window as the space filled. My heart hammered against my ribs. Somewhere in that crowd was my father. You're going to do great, Jessica said. She'd been quiet all morning, but now she offered an encouraging smile. First impressions matter. Be confident, not arrogant. Accessible, not weak. At 9 a.m. sharp, Thomas walked onto the stage. The room quieted immediately. He commanded that kind of attention, not through intimidation, but through earned respect. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know there's been speculation about organizational changes, so let's get right to it. Clearwater Industries has experienced steady growth over the past decade, but steady isn't enough anymore. Our competitors are innovating, markets are shifting, and we need to evolve or risk irrelevance. He clicked a remote, and the screen behind him lit up with an organizational chart. We're creating a new division, strategic growth, that will focus on market expansion, brand development, and long-term competitive positioning. This isn't about changing what works. It's about building on our foundation to reach new heights. Another click. A photo of me appeared on the screen, professional headshot, confident smile. Leading this division as vice president will be Alice Martinez. She comes to us from Pemberton Strategic Group, where she built an impressive track record of turning around struggling accounts and identifying untapped market opportunities. She's young, she's brilliant, and she's exactly the kind of forward-thinking leader we need. The room erupted in polite applause. Through the window, I scanned the crowd, searching for one specific face, and then I found him, 3rd row, left side. Robert Martinez sat perfectly still, his face drained of color, staring at my photo on the screen as if it were a hallucination. His mouth had fallen slightly open. The man next to him, a colleague from logistics, leaned over and said something, But my father didn't respond. He just stared. Alice will officially start today, Thomas continued. She'll be spending her first week meeting with department heads, understanding our operations, and beginning to shape her strategic vision. I expect everyone to give her your full cooperation and support. Now, I'd like to bring her out so you can meet her in person. Please welcome Alice Martinez. Daniel opened the door. You're on. I walked onto that stage with my head high, my stride purposeful. The applause grew slightly louder. Some people were genuinely welcoming. Others were clearly reserving judgment. A few looked openly skeptical. A 28-year-old VP was unusual, and I'd have to prove myself worthy of the title, but I only cared about one person's reaction. I reached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the sea of faces. My father was no longer pale. He'd turned red, his jaw clenched so tight I could see it from the stage. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. And thank you all for that warm welcome. My voice carried clearly through the speakers, steady and professional. I know change can be unsettling, but I want you to know that I'm not here to disrupt what works. I'm here to amplify it. Over the next several weeks, I'll be meeting with each department to understand your challenges, your successes, and your ideas for growth. I believe the best strategies come from the people doing the work, not just from executive offices. I made eye contact with different sections of the room as I spoke, a technique Margaret Chen had taught me. Connect with the audience, make them feel seen. I'm excited to be part of the Clearwater family. This company has an incredible reputation and talented people. My job is to help channel that talent into new opportunities. If you have ideas, my door is open. If you have concerns, I want to hear them. We're going to do great things together. More applause. Thomas returned to the stage, shaking my hand for the cameras. HR was documenting this for the company newsletter. As employees began to filter out, some approached the stage to introduce themselves. I shook hands, made small talk, memorized names and faces, professional, gracious, vice presidential. Robert Martinez walked out without looking back. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mother. I'm so proud of you, mija. Call me later. And then another text, from a number I recognized but hadn't heard from in years. Kevin, my brother? Holy shit. Dad just called me. What did you do? I slipped the phone back into my pocket and smiled at the next person in line to meet me. What had I done? I'd won. Now came the harder question. What would I do next? My office was on the 11th floor, in a corner with windows facing north and east. The furniture was sleek. Glass desk, ergonomic chair, a small conference table for team meetings. My name was already on the door. Alice Martinez, VP Strategic Growth. I spent the first 3 hours unpacking my belongings and reviewing organizational documents Daniel had prepared. Department budgets, employee profiles, current projects, quarterly performance metrics. Clearwater Industries employed 847 people across 6 divisions. Logistics, my father's department, had 63 employees and was responsible for supply chain management, inventory control, and distribution coordination. At noon, my assistant knocked. Rachel Park, mid-30s, efficient and professional. She'd worked for the previous VP of operations before that position was restructured. Ms. Martinez, you have your first departmental meeting at 2. Marketing division, and you have 17 email requests for one-on-one introductory meetings. Should I start scheduling those? Yes, please. Try to fit as many as possible into this week and next. 20-minute slots should work. Understood. Also, she hesitated. Robert Martinez from Logistics requested a meeting. He marked it urgent. There it was. Less than 4 hours into my first day. What time did he request it? He asked for today if possible, but I can push it to later this week if you prefer. I could delay this. Make him wait. Let him sit with the shock for a few days. But that felt cowardly, and I hadn't gotten here by avoiding difficult conversations. Schedule him for 4:30 today. 30-minute block. Rachel's eyebrows rose slightly. She clearly knew the family connection. Office gossip traveled fast, but she simply nodded. I'll let him know. The marketing meeting went smoothly. I met with their director, Linda Shapiro, and her team of 6. They walked me through current campaigns, budget constraints, and growth opportunities. I asked questions, took notes, and made it clear I was there to listen before making any changes. They seemed cautiously optimistic about the new division. At 4:20, I reviewed my notes one final time. I'd prepared talking points, anticipated arguments, and planned responses. But I also knew that 20 years of resentment couldn't be managed with bullet points. At 4:30 exactly, Rachel buzzed my intercom. "Robert Martinez is here. Send him in." My father walked through the door, and for a moment I saw him as a stranger might. A man in his mid-50s, graying hair, wearing business casual with that Clearwater logo on his shirt. He'd gained weight since I'd last seen him at Christmas. His face carried the weathered look of someone who worked hard, but never quite escaped the weight of his own limitations. He stopped just inside the doorway, taking in the office, the view, the furniture, the nameplate on my desk. His expression cycled through emotions: shock, anger, confusion, something that might have been hurt. "Sit down, Dad," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. He remained standing. "This is some kind of joke." "It's not. I was hired based on my qualifications. Please, sit." He moved slowly to the chair, lowering himself like his legs might give out. Up close, I could see the tremor in his hands, the tightness around his eyes. "How long have you been planning this?" His voice was rough, accusatory. "I was contacted by Daniel Brennan 3 months ago. I interviewed, I was offered the position, and I accepted it. There was no conspiracy, no scheme. They needed a VP for strategic growth. I was qualified." "That's it? That's it?" He laughed bitterly. "You just happened to apply to my company? Just happened to land a VP position? Just happened to not mention any of this?" "You're right. I could have told you. But when in the last 15 years have we had a conversation where you asked about my career? When have you shown any interest in what I've accomplished?" "Don't turn this around on me. This is about you humiliating me in front of my entire workplace. Everyone in logistics knows you're my daughter. Everyone in the building knows. And now everyone knows that my daughter is—" He gestured vaguely at my office. "This. A vice president? A successful professional?" "Yes, Dad, that's exactly what I am." His face reddened. "You're 28 years old. You don't have the experience for this role. They hired you to check some diversity box or because you're good at playing politics. This is a mistake and everyone knows it." There it was. The same dismissive assessment, delivered with the same certainty he'd always had. I'd spent years preparing for this moment, imagining how I'd respond. Part of me wanted to match his anger, to catalog every cruel comment he'd ever made and throw them back in his face. Instead, I kept my voice level, professional. "I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration. I earned my MBA while working full-time. I've spent 7 years building a track record of successful campaigns and client management. At Pemberton Strategic Group, I managed accounts worth over $4 million annually. My interview performance convinced 3 executives that I was the right person for this position. But you're right about one thing, I am 28, which means I accomplished all of that despite being told my entire life that I'd fail." He looked away, jaw working. "This is going to make everything awkward. How am I supposed to work here knowing my boss's boss is my own daughter? The same way you worked here for years without caring that your daughter existed. Logistics doesn't report directly to strategic growth. Our professional paths will rarely cross. You can continue doing your job and I'll do mine. And what about family dinners? Holidays? You're going to sit there knowing you did this to make some point?" "I did this for me, Dad, not to you. Not at you, for me. Because I earned it. Because I'm good at what I do. Because I deserve the opportunity." I leaned forward. "But if we're talking about family dynamics, let's be honest. We haven't had a real relationship since I was 12 years old. You checked out. You decided I wasn't worth your time or attention. Don't blame me now for building a life and career without your support. I was hard on you because life is hard. I didn't want you to have unrealistic expectations." "You were cruel," I interrupted. "There's a difference between preparing someone for reality and systematically destroying their confidence. You didn't toughen me up. You tried to break me down, and when I succeeded anyway, you ignored it. Silence settled between us. Outside my office window, the Phoenix skyline glittered in the late afternoon sun. Somewhere in the building, 847 employees were finishing their workday, unaware of this particular confrontation. My father stood slowly. I don't know what you want from me, Alice. I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the point. I stopped waiting for your approval years ago. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. You think this makes you better than me? No, I said quietly. I think this makes me different from what you predicted. And I think that terrifies you. He left without another word, the door closing with a soft click. I sat at my desk for a long time after he left, staring at nothing. Victory was supposed to feel triumphant. Instead, it felt hollow and complicated. I'd proven him wrong. I'd achieved everything he said I couldn't. But the satisfaction I'd anticipated was mixed with something else. A sadness for the relationship we'd never had, for the father who couldn't celebrate his daughter's success. My phone buzzed. Kevin. Mom told me you saw Dad. You okay? I typed back, I will be. Rachel knocked softly, poking her head in. Everything all right, Miss Martinez? Fine. Just a long first day. Well, you've got 17 more departmental meetings scheduled over the next 2 weeks, and your calendar is filling fast. Welcome to executive life. I smiled despite everything. Thanks, Rachel. See you tomorrow. That night I called my mother. She listened as I recounted the meeting, offering no judgment, just quiet understanding. What happens now? She asked. Now I do my job. I prove I belong here. And I let him deal with his own feelings about it. And if he can't? Then that's his problem, Mama, not mine. Not anymore. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my apartment window, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow I'd meet with the IT department. Friday was finance. Next week I'd start developing the strategic framework for my division. My father's reaction didn't change any of that. His doubt didn't diminish my qualifications. His anger didn't erase my accomplishments. I was Alice Martinez, Vice President of Strategic Growth at Clearwater Industries, and I was just getting started. Week 2 at Clearwater Industries brought unexpected challenges that had nothing to do with my father. The real test of my position came from sources I hadn't fully anticipated: skeptical department heads, territorial managers, and a corporate culture resistant to change. Tuesday morning, I met with Gregory Hutchinson, Director of Sales. He was in his late 40s, had been with Clearwater for 16 years, and made no effort to hide his skepticism. He arrived 8 minutes late to our meeting, carrying a coffee cup and wearing an expression that suggested this was a waste of his time. Mr. Hutchinson, thanks for meeting with me, I began, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. Greg is fine. He sat down heavily. So what does strategic growth actually do? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like corporate speak for we're creating another layer of management. Direct. I could work directly. Fair question. Strategic growth isn't about adding bureaucracy. It's about identifying market opportunities that our current structure isn't positioned to capture. New customer segments, untapped regions, innovative service models. My job is to find those opportunities and create actionable plans to pursue them. And how does that not step on sales' territory? Because I'm not here to sell. I'm here to open doors that sales can walk through. If I identify a new market segment, your team would be the ones closing those deals. I create the strategy, you execute the revenue generation. He studied me for a moment, then leaned back. You're younger than my daughter. She's finishing her MBA right now. No offense, but why should I trust that you know what you're doing? This question again. I'd answer it as many times as necessary. Because results matter more than age. At Pemberton, I helped a failing tech startup reposition their brand and identify new B2B opportunities. Within 18 months, they went from near bankruptcy to profitability. At 26, I managed a crisis response for a client whose product launch went viral for all the wrong reasons. We turned negative press into a conversation about corporate responsibility and recovered their market position. Experience isn't just about years. It's about what you've navigated. Greg nodded slowly. All right, I'm listening. What's your first move? Before I make any moves, I need to understand our current positioning. I'm meeting with every department head, reviewing market data, and talking to frontline employees. A strategy built without ground-level insight is just expensive guesswork. He smiled for the first time. You might actually know what you're doing. I do. And I'm going to prove it. After Greg left, I reviewed data Jessica Thornton had sent over, quarterly performance reports, customer retention rates, competitor analysis. One pattern emerged clearly. Clearwater dominated the Arizona market, but had minimal presence in Nevada, New Mexico, and Southern California. We had the infrastructure to expand, but lacked the strategic push. That afternoon, I called a meeting with my newly assembled team. Daniel had helped me recruit 3 people from within Clearwater: Marcus Chen from Market Research, Stephanie Valdez from Business Development, and James Crawford from Operations Planning. All 3 had strong track records but had hit ceiling positions in their previous departments. All right, team, I began as they settled around my conference table. We have a blank slate. Strategic growth didn't exist 3 weeks ago. That means we get to build something from scratch, but it also means we have to prove our value quickly. I need each of you to think about one question. Where is Clearwater leaving money on the table? Marcus spoke first. Geographic expansion. We're Phoenix-centric, but there's huge demand in Las Vegas and Albuquerque that we're not touching. Noted. Stephanie? Partnership opportunities. We operate in silos, but there are complementary businesses we could collaborate with for mutual benefit. Joint ventures, strategic alliances. Good. James? Process efficiency. We have redundancies across departments that slow us down. If we streamlined, we could handle higher volume without proportionally increasing costs. I wrote all 3 on the whiteboard. Excellent starting points. Here's how we're going to tackle this. Marcus, I want a comprehensive geographic analysis by the end of month. Market size, competitor presence, entry barriers. Stephanie, identify 5 potential partnership opportunities with concrete benefit projections. James, map our current processes and flag redundancies. We reconvene in 2 weeks with preliminary findings. They exchanged glances. Stephanie spoke carefully. Ms. Martinez, that's ambitious for a 2-week timeline. Call me Alice. And yes, it's ambitious. But we're the new division. Everyone's watching to see if we're legitimate or just corporate theater. We need to deliver substantive work quickly. Marcus grinned. I like the pressure. Let's do it. As they filed out, energized and focused, I felt the first genuine excitement since taking the position. This was the work I loved. Building something, solving complex puzzles, turning analysis into action. Thursday brought an unexpected complication. I was reviewing budget allocations when Rachel buzzed my intercom. Alice, there's a situation. Gregory Hutchinson and your father are in a heated discussion in the 3rd-floor break room. Security wants to know if you want them to intervene. My stomach dropped. What are they arguing about? According to witnesses, your father made a comment about your qualifications, and Greg defended you. It escalated from there. I stood immediately. Tell security to stand by, but don't intervene yet. I'm heading down. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor felt interminable. This was exactly what I'd hoped to avoid, my personal situation creating workplace drama. When the doors opened, I could hear raised voices before I even reached the break room. Been here 2 decades, and suddenly some kid with a fancy degree thinks she can restructure everything. My father's voice, loud and bitter. That kid has more strategic vision than you've developed in 20 years of pushing papers. Greg's tone was sharp. Maybe instead of complaining, you should try learning something. I walked into the break room. Both men turned. My father's face was flushed. Greg's jaw was set. 3 other employees stood frozen by the coffee machine, clearly uncomfortable witnesses. Gentlemen, I said calmly, this conversation is over. Greg, I need you in my office. Dad? Robert, you need to return to your station. Don't you dare tell me what to do, my father snapped. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You get a little power and suddenly, Robert, my voice cut through his rant like ice. You are currently creating a hostile work environment. And if this continues, I will have no choice but to file a formal HR complaint. Not as your daughter. As a vice president, witnessing employee misconduct. Do you understand? The room went silent. My father stared at me, rage and something else, maybe humiliation, warring across his features. Finally, without a word, he stalked out. The other employees quickly dispersed. Greg started to speak, but I held up a hand. My office. Now. Once we were behind closed doors, I turned to face him. What happened? He was bad-mouthing you to anyone who'd listen, saying you slept your way into the position, that it was affirmative action, that you'd crash and burn within 6 months. I told him he was full of it. Things got heated. I closed my eyes briefly. Greg, I appreciate you defending me, truly, but you can't engage with him. It makes everything worse. So I'm supposed to just let him trash your reputation? Yes, because anything else creates the exact drama everyone's already watching for. I need to succeed on merit, not because people defended me in break room arguments. Greg shook his head. That's not fair to you. Maybe not. But it's the reality of my situation. Please, just ignore him. Let him talk. Eventually, my work will speak louder than his complaints. After Greg left, I called HR and documented the incident. Not to punish my father, but to create a paper trail in case this pattern continued. Then I called Thomas Whitmore and gave him a heads up about the situation. How are you handling it? He asked. Professionally? But I won't lie, it's harder than I expected. I imagine it is. Here's my advice. Focus on results. Deliver exceptional work. Make yourself indispensable. Everything else becomes noise. That evening, I stayed late at the office, reviewing Marcus's preliminary geographic data. The research was solid. Las Vegas presented a significant expansion opportunity with relatively low entry barriers. We could potentially increase revenue by 18% within 2 years if we executed correctly. Around 8 p.m., I noticed someone had slipped a note under my door. Plain paper, handwritten in neat cursive. Some of us are rooting for you. Don't let the dinosaurs grind you down. A friend in accounting. I tucked the note into my desk drawer, a small reminder that not everyone doubted me. Somewhere in this building, people were watching my success, not my failure. People who wanted to see what was possible when someone dared to break patterns. My phone buzzed. Kevin, heard about the break room thing. Dad's losing it. You okay? Me. I'm fine. Just another day in paradise. Kevin, for what it's worth, I think what you're doing is badass. Even if it makes family dinners impossible. I smiled at that. Kevin and I had never been particularly close. He'd been Dad's favorite, and I'd resented him for it. But maybe this situation was clarifying things for him too. Friday afternoon, I presented my first recommendation to the executive team. A detailed proposal for Nevada market expansion, backed by Marcus's research and preliminary budget projections. Thomas asked hard questions. Jessica challenged my timeline. Daniel suggested modifications to the approach. But by the end of the meeting, I had preliminary approval to develop a full strategic plan. Good work, Alice, Thomas said as everyone filed out. You're finding your footing faster than I expected. Thank you, sir. Though I have to ask, did you expect me to struggle? He smiled slightly. I expected you to face resistance. The fact that you're converting skeptics like Greg Hutchinson tells me you're doing more than surviving. You're leading. As I packed up my laptop that evening, I reflected on the week. I'd navigated departmental politics, diffused a workplace confrontation, assembled a capable team, and delivered my first strategic recommendation. My father's words still stung. The break room incident still bothered me. But for the first time since taking this position, I felt like I was building something bigger than revenge. I was building a career, a legacy. A version of myself my father's words could never touch, and that felt more powerful than any confrontation ever could. 6 weeks into my role, the Nevada expansion plan was approved with a $2.3 million budget. It was my first major victory, a concrete demonstration that strategic growth wasn't just corporate window dressing. The announcement went company-wide on a Wednesday morning. and my inbox flooded with congratulations from department heads who'd initially been skeptical. But success brought visibility, and visibility brought scrutiny. That afternoon, I received a calendar invite from Jessica Thornton. Logistics Integration Discussion, Friday 2 p.m. The meeting included me, Jessica, Operations Director Paul Mendez, and Robert Martinez as the logistics coordinator who'd be handling supply chain elements of the Nevada expansion. My father and I, in the same meeting, professionally required to collaborate. I considered asking Jessica to assign someone else from logistics, but that would look like I was avoiding the situation. Worse, it would signal that I couldn't handle working with my own father. So I accepted the invite and spent Thursday evening preparing my materials, determined to be so thoroughly professional that no one could question my conduct. Friday arrived with unseasonable rain, gray clouds obscuring the usual Phoenix sunshine. I dressed in my most authoritative outfit: navy suit, white blouse, minimal jewelry. Armor for battle, though the weapons would be PowerPoint presentations and budget spreadsheets. I arrived at the conference room 5 minutes early. Paul Mendez was already there, reviewing notes on his tablet. He was in his late 30s, competent and straightforward, someone I'd worked well with on preliminary logistics planning. Alice, good to see you. Excited to dig into the implementation details. Likewise. How's the timeline looking from your end? Aggressive but manageable if logistics can handle the inventory redistribution efficiently. Jessica arrived next, followed by my father. He took a seat at the opposite end of the table, as far from me as the room allowed. He didn't acknowledge my presence, didn't make eye contact. Fine. We could be professionals who happen to share DNA. Jessica opened the meeting. Thanks, everyone. We're here to coordinate the operational elements of the Nevada expansion. Alice, walk us through the timeline and key milestones. I clicked through my presentation, outlining the 6-month rollout. Market preparation in months 1 and 2, soft launch in month 3, full operations by month 6. Each phase had specific requirements, including inventory positioning, distribution network setup, and supply chain coordination. The critical dependency is inventory management, I explained. We need products positioned in strategic warehouses to ensure delivery times meet customer expectations. That's where logistics become essential. Jessica turned to my father. Robert, you've reviewed the inventory requirements. What's your assessment? He cleared his throat, eyes fixed on his laptop screen. The volumes are manageable, but the timeline is compressed. We'd need to reallocate resources from our Arizona operations temporarily, which could impact our current service levels. By how much? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. 5 to 7% efficiency decrease for 8 to 10 weeks. Paul frowned. That's significant. Can we mitigate that? My father finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. Not without additional staffing or extended timeline. The plan, as presented, doesn't account for operational realities. There it was. A direct challenge to my strategy, delivered in perfectly professional language. He wasn't wrong to raise the concern, but I'd anticipated this. I appreciate that concern, I said evenly, which is why the budget includes a $180,000 allocation for temporary logistics support. We can bring in contract workers for the transition period, maintaining Arizona efficiency while supporting Nevada launch. Jessica nodded. That seems reasonable. Robert, would that address your concerns? It's one solution, he conceded. Though managing contract workers adds complexity. They don't know our systems, our processes. There's a learning curve. How long? I asked. 2 weeks minimum for basic competency. 4 weeks for full efficiency. Then we adjust the timeline. Start the temporary hiring in month 1 instead of month 2. That gives us the 4-week buffer. Paul, does that work from your end? Paul checked his notes. Yeah, that actually helps. Gives us more preparation time. Jessica made a note on her tablet. Good problem solving. Robert, can you prepare a detailed staffing plan with specific numbers and training requirements? I'll have it by next Wednesday, he said. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes, working through distribution routes, warehouse specifications, and vendor coordination. My father contributed professionally, raising legitimate concerns and proposing workable solutions. I responded to each point on its merits, never defensive, never personal. To any outside observer, we were simply colleagues doing our jobs. But I noticed the small things. How he never addressed me by name, always using the plan or the proposal instead of Alice's recommendation. How his jaw clenched when Jessica complimented my thoroughness. How he gathered his materials and left the moment the meeting ended, while Paul and Jessica stayed to chat. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room, staring at my notes. We'd gotten through it, professionally, successfully. So why did I feel exhausted? That evening, I met Margaret Chen for dinner at an upscale Italian restaurant in Scottsdale. She'd been my mentor for 6 years, and I'd kept her updated on the Clearwater situation. Margaret was one of the few people who understood both the professional triumph and the personal complexity. "How's the VP life treating you?" she asked over wine and bruschetta. "Exhausting, exhilarating, complicated. The holy trinity of executive positions." She smiled. "Tell me about something complicated." I recounted the meeting with my father, the careful dance of professionalism over personal history. Margaret listened intently, asking clarifying questions, never rushing to judgment. "Here's what I'm hearing," she said finally. "You're succeeding professionally. You're earning respect from colleagues. You're delivering results, but you're still waiting for something from your father that he may never give you. I'm not waiting for anything from him. Aren't you? Alice, you took a job at his company. You proved yourself to his colleagues, his boss. Every success you have there is, on some level, directed at him. I'm not saying that's wrong. Vindication is a powerful motivator. But at some point you need to ask yourself, when is it enough?" Her words landed heavily. "I thought it would be enough when I got the position. Then I thought it would be enough after our first meeting, when he couldn't deny my success anymore. Now I'm thinking maybe it'll be enough when the Nevada expansion succeeds, when I prove my strategy was right. And if it's never enough?" I didn't have an answer. Margaret leaned forward. "You're exceptional at your job, Alice. You earned that VP title through talent and hard work. But you're also carrying a weight that has nothing to do with business strategy. At some point, you need to decide. Are you working for Clearwater Industries, or are you still trying to prove something to Robert Martinez?" The question haunted me through the weekend. Sunday afternoon, I drove to my mother's house, a small ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood where she'd lived since the divorce 3 years ago. Yes, my parents had divorced. That detail hadn't come up yet, but it mattered. My father's retirement from family life had eventually become official. Mom was in her garden, tending to her roses. She'd taken up gardening after the divorce, creating beauty in a space that was entirely hers. "Mia, you look tired," she said, pulling off her gardening gloves to hug me. "Long week. Big meeting with Dad." We settled on her back patio with iced tea. I told her about the logistics meeting, about Margaret's question, about the confusion I felt despite my professional success. "Your father called me yesterday," she said quietly. "First time in months. What did he want?" "To complain about you initially, but then—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "Then he said something interesting. He said, 'Elena, did we do this? Did we make her so determined to prove herself that she can't just be happy?'" I stared at her. "He's blaming us for my ambition?" "No. I think for the first time he's wondering if his treatment of you created something he didn't intend. You were supposed to fail in his mind. That was the narrative he'd constructed. But you didn't fail. You succeeded so thoroughly that it shattered his worldview. And now he doesn't know how to reconcile the daughter he ignored with the executive he has to respect professionally. That's not my problem to solve." "No, it's not. But Mija, Margaret's right. You need to decide what you're working toward. Are you building a career, or are you building a monument to prove your father wrong? Because those are different things." Monday morning, I arrived at the office with a new clarity. I called my team together and asked a simple question. If we weren't trying to prove ourselves, what would we do differently? The question caught them off guard. Marcus spoke first. "We'd take more calculated risks. Right now, We're playing it safe because we're the new division. Everyone's watching for us to fail, Stephanie nodded. We'd collaborate more openly. I've been holding back on some cross-departmental ideas because I didn't want to step on toes. James added, we'd focus on long-term transformation instead of quick wins. Build something sustainable instead of just impressive. I looked at each of them. Then that's what we're going to do. Starting now. No more performing for an audience. We're going to do the work we actually believe in. That afternoon, I drafted a new strategic proposal, something bigger and riskier than the Nevada expansion. A complete reimagining of Clearwater's market approach, incorporating Stephanie's partnership ideas, James's efficiency improvements, and Marcus's market research. It was ambitious. It was bold. It might fail, but it was a real strategy, not revenge theater. I scheduled a meeting with Thomas Whitmore for the following week to present the idea. Before that meeting, though, I did something I hadn't done since taking the VP position. I deleted my father's contact information from my phone. Not in anger, not in spite, but in recognition that I needed to stop measuring my success against his failure to acknowledge it. His opinion, positive or negative, could no longer be the metric by which I judged my own worth. I was Alice Martinez, VP of Strategic Growth, and it was time to grow beyond the past. 3 months after deleting my father's contact information, the Nevada expansion exceeded projections by 22%. Revenue was up, customer satisfaction scores were strong, and operational efficiency had actually improved rather than declined. My team had proven that strategic growth wasn't just a vanity division, it was delivering measurable business impact. Thomas Whitmore called me into his office on a Thursday morning in late March. The Phoenix heat was already building, promising another scorching summer ahead. Alice, sit. We need to talk about your comprehensive transformation proposal. I'd presented the plan 6 weeks earlier, a 3-year strategy to reposition Clearwater as an innovative market leader rather than a regional logistics company. It involved partnerships with tech firms, expansion into 4 new states, and a cultural shift toward agile operations. It was ambitious, expensive, and exactly the kind of bold thinking Thomas had hired me to provide. I've reviewed it with the board, he continued. They have concerns about the budget. We're talking about a $12 million investment over 3 years. But they're intrigued. More importantly, they're impressed with what you've accomplished in 4 months. So what's the verdict? Conditional approval. They want to see Phase 1 executed flawlessly before committing to the full plan. That means you've got 1 year to demonstrate ROI on the partnership strategy and the Colorado expansion. If those hit targets, the board releases funding for Phases 2 and 3. I felt an adrenaline spike. I can do that. I know you can. There's something else. He paused, measuring his words. The board wants to formalize your position. You've been operating as VP, but they want to create a C-suite role, Chief Strategy Officer. It would come with a significant raise, equity options, and a seat at the executive table for all major company decisions. I stared at him, processing. CSO, Chief Strategy Officer. At 29 years old. There's a catch, isn't there? I asked. Thomas smiled slightly. You're learning to read corporate politics. Yes. The promotion would be announced at our annual company meeting in June. That's 3 months away. Between now and then, I need to see continued results, zero drama, and proof that you can handle the pressure of C-suite responsibilities. Understood. I won't let you down. I don't think you will. But Alice, his tone shifted, more personal. I also need you to resolve whatever's still simmering with your father. I've heard rumors of tension, witnessed that break room incident. If this gets escalated to HR formally, it becomes a problem for both of you. Handle it, one way or another. After leaving Thomas's office, I sat in my own space, staring at the city skyline. Chief Strategy Officer? It was beyond anything I'd imagined when I first applied here. But Thomas was right about one thing. I couldn't move forward while dragging the past behind me. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove to my father's apartment. He'd moved out of the family house after the divorce, settling into a modest 2-bedroom place near the office. I sat in my car for 10 minutes gathering courage before finally walking to his door. He answered on the third knock, surprise and suspicion crossing his face in equal measure. "Alice, what are you doing here? Can we talk?" "Just 10 minutes." He hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was sparse, functional furniture, no personal touches, the living space of someone who'd given up on creating a home. It made me sad in ways I hadn't anticipated. We sat in his small living room, an awkward silence stretching between us. "I'm not here to fight," I said finally. "I'm here because we need to find a way to coexist. We work for the same company, we share the same last name, and we're both tired." He looked older than I remembered, worn down by something more than just age. "What do you want me to say, Alice?" "I don't want you to say anything. I want you to listen." I took a breath. "You were right about one thing. I did take this job partly to prove you wrong. I wanted you to see that your daughter, the one you said would never amount to anything, could succeed beyond your imagination. I wanted vindication. Well, you got it. But here's what I've realized. Your validation isn't worth what I thought it was. I've been carrying around this need for you to acknowledge me, to apologize, to admit you were wrong. But that's been poisoning me. I've built a successful career, Dad. I've earned respect from people who matter. I don't need your approval anymore." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Do you know why I was so hard on you? Because you didn't believe in me." "No." He shook his head. "Because I saw myself in you. The doubt, the fear of failure. I was mediocre my entire career, Alice. I knew it. Everyone knew it. I worked at Clearwater for 22 years and barely advanced. I watched people younger than me get promoted while I stayed in the same position. And when I looked at you, quiet, uncertain, struggling, I saw my own limitations reflected back. I hadn't expected that. So you tried to lower my expectations? I tried to protect you from the disappointment I felt every day. If you never tried, you could never fail. But you," he laughed bitterly, "you didn't listen. You tried anyway, and you succeeded in ways I never could. Do you know how that feels? To watch your daughter become everything you weren't? That's not my burden to carry, Dad. I know. I know it's not." He rubbed his face tiredly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that every cruel thing I said came from my own failure, not from anything lacking in you. You were always capable. I was just too broken to see it." Something inside me shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet. But understanding, my father hadn't been a villain. He'd been a hurt person hurting others, projecting his own limitations onto the people closest to him. "I'm being considered for Chief Strategy Officer," I said. The announcement would be in June. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. That's incredible, Alice. It is. And I need to know, can you handle that? Can you work in this building while your daughter sits in the C-suite? Because if you can't, I need you to tell me now." "I can handle it," he said quietly. "I'll have to, won't I? Besides, maybe it's time I started being proud instead of bitter." I stood to leave. At the door, I turned back. "I'm not ready for a relationship. Maybe someday, but not now. Too much has happened. But I am ready for us to be civil, professional. Two people who happen to share history but don't have to be defined by it. I can do civil service," he said. "And Alice, for what it's worth, you earned everything you've achieved. It had nothing to do with me." "I know," I said. "That's what took me so long to understand." The months between that conversation and the June announcement passed in a blur of strategic execution. My team launched the Colorado expansion. We secured partnerships with 2 major tech firms. We implemented James's efficiency improvements, saving the company $400,000 in operational costs. The results spoke for themselves. In late May, Thomas called me into his office one final time. The board voted unanimously. Chief Strategy Officer effective June 15th. "Congratulations, Alice. You've earned this." The annual company meeting was held in a hotel ballroom. All 847 employees gathered for presentations, awards, and organizational announcements. I sat in the front row with the other executives, my mother in the audience, watching with tears in her eyes. When Thomas announced my promotion to Chief Strategy Officer, the applause was genuine, enthusiastic. People I'd won over through results, through collaboration, through proving my worth day after day. From my seat, I could see my father in the middle section, sitting with his logistics team. When the applause began, he stood. And then he clapped. Not enthusiastically, not with theatrical pride, but genuinely, respectfully. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't the relationship I'd wanted as a 12-year-old struggling with math homework. But it was something. Acknowledgement, acceptance, a small step toward peace. After the ceremony, colleagues congratulated me, shook my hand, and expressed excitement about the company's direction. My team gathered around, celebrating our collective success. Margaret Chen sent a text. "Told you that you'd do great things. Proud of you." My mother hugged me tightly. "Your abuela would be so proud, mija. I wish she could see this." "She knows, Mama. Somehow she knows." As people filtered out toward the reception, my father approached hesitantly. We stood facing each other, the noise of celebration around us, a lifetime of complicated history between us. "Congratulations, Alice," he said formally. "Chief Strategy Officer. That's quite an achievement. Thank you." An awkward pause. Then, "I meant what I said. You earned this." "I did," I agreed. "And Dad? I hope you find peace with your own career. You gave 22 years to this company. That's worth something too." Something softened in his expression. Not quite forgiveness on either side, but perhaps the beginning of mutual respect. He nodded once, then disappeared into the crowd. That evening, I stood in my new office, larger, corner position, with a view of the entire Phoenix skyline. My nameplate read Alice Martinez, Chief Strategy Officer. On my desk sat a framed photo of my mother, a copy of my MBA diploma, and that anonymous note from accounting. "Some of us are rooting for you." I thought about the 12-year-old girl struggling with math homework, convinced she wasn't smart enough. The high school student achieved excellence that went unnoticed. The college student is working 3 jobs and surviving on determination. The young professional climbed the ladder despite every obstacle. All of them had led to this moment. My father had said I'd never amount to anything. He'd been wrong. But more importantly, I'd stopped needing him to admit it. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to my team. "Dinner tomorrow night to celebrate. My treat. We've got a 3-year plan to execute, and we're going to make it legendary." Because that's what this had always been about. Not revenge, not vindication, but the simple, powerful truth that we determine our own worth. And I had always had enough. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.